So, welcome to today's class. It will be a yin practice, which means a passive, more restorative practice. Last week, we talked about how we've officially entered, in the Northern Hemisphere anyways, the spring, which is the liver and gallbladder meridians. The liver, just as a quick overview, runs up the inside lines of the legs, wraps around the genitals, and then comes up through the sides of the body and ends actually nipple line in the sixth intercostal space of our ribs. So very much the freedom or stuckness of our diaphragm or ribs will have a lot to tell us about the ability of our liver meridian to flow freely. So really taking this springtime to wake up the ribs and how they articulate, of course, with the spine at the back, but also the sides of the body and their ability to, with our breath, expand and contract, expand and contract, and even just slowly starting to pay attention to that. Like when I'm breathing, are my ribs moving? Or are they sort of fixed at this point in time, which then my diaphragm, my thoracic diaphragm might be fixed too. So that's a thing of spring that you can kind of begin to play with. Not something we're exploring in this class particularly, but we probably will soon. But just for your own sensing and sourcing of self. But so that's the liver, inner legs, sides of the body, and then the gallbladder is essentially the entire outside of the body. So from the temporal through the armpits, down the sides of the ribs, sides of your hips, outer leg, all the way to the fourth toe. And so in this practice, we'll be focusing on that. They also say in spring, we have well, they don't say, this might be a feeling, it might be my feeling, but maybe you have it too, where spring comes and it's like, I can wake up and like be free again from the winter slumber, and you just sort of want to slough it off and be able to go straight into summer, and yet we have to go through this spring phase. And I live somewhere where nature really has a spring phase, and it's spring. You often hear in the wellness industry is all about planting your seeds and making intentions, and this is obviously a part of it, but we don't talk about how like dry the ground is. Like we have a front yard that I need to deal with. It's all grass right now, and we're south facing, so it gets a lot of sun, and it's just brown. Like everything's brown and dry and crispy, and the roads are dirty with all of nature's releasing that happened in the fall still, and there's puddles and mud, and the rivers are still like breaking apart from ice, and it's not a season where we get to miss. It's a season where it's like beautifully 5 to 10 degrees one day, and then the next day it's snowing again, and there's this intense pulsation of the body and of the energy in the body and of the experience too. It's like you get to go outside after being used to being inside, and then you get trapped inside again when it snows. And when you get trapped again after you got that sense of freedom, it can feel really wild. It can feel like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And then you get this frustration and anger and all this stuff that comes up. And that is truly the spring season, that it's this intense pulsation. And if you think of a seed and what it actually has to go through in order to become the beautiful flower or vegetable that it becomes near when summer emerges, when there's actually full sun in the sky, this seed gets like shoved into dirt, covered up, obviously dependent on the seed, how much it gets covered up, but it gets covered up in dark soil. And it's still cold in the ground when we're planting in spring. And so you have this seed full of potential just sitting there in this cold, dark space. And this is spring. And the ground is doing its thawing, and it has its bit of movement as well. But the seed has to gain enough potential energy and enough discomfort or the plant inside the shell of the seed, I should say, enough discomfort that it like breaks the shell apart. And once it breaks, and if you ever watch a time-lapse video of a shell breaking and then the root goes down and the plant goes up, it is so fascinating and so brilliant. But I digress a little bit here. So it's that effort. It's this like immense amount of pressure and effort that yields the seed to break open. And then the plant is like, wow, I'm still in darkness and packed under soil. And it has to push its way up through the soil where there could be clay and rocks and whatever else sort of things, people walking over top of it. And it makes its way through. And then once it's through is kind of when summer begins. And so just to remember that spring is a real season, and often we want to just zoom right through it. But if we can allow ourselves to honor spring as an aspect of the cycles, then come summer, we will have lots of seeds planted, soil tended, watered, sunshine. Our seeds were planted based on reality. They were planted based on what we want for ourselves, our vision. And then summer comes and we get to watch our vision paired with the actions we took come alive. We get to watch the flowers bloom. We get to watch the food come. We get to slowly harvest from our gardens and feed ourselves more nourishment. And so even though, of course, it's like they say for the lotus, it's like no mud, no lotus. And so part of this is just finding ways where we can really honor the season, not feel like we need to rush it or make it something that it's not, but really sit with like throwing on rubber boots and stomping in the puddles and getting muddy and checking your soils and moving back into this slow action and this slow waking up. And that's sort of the key I was getting to, is it's slow. It's not winter, boom, summer. It's winter, spring, summer. It's this slow waking up. And so even in the body, if you find you're like, oh, I want to start getting going now that the sun's going, the body isn't quite ready for that yet. There's this time in the spring season where you want to wake it up slowly. You want to imagine like a flower just very ever so slightly opening. It's slow. We don't want to pull it open. The same way with butterflies, you don't want to rip them out of their cocoon. It's the struggle of the butterfly making its way out of the cocoon that allows the butterfly to actually fly and survive. And so in this moment where you might feel these urges to want to expand really quickly, how can we instead allow ourselves to still be enjoying some warmer meals, some quiet time, some slow movements in the body that wake up the joints? This is where we're at. And so instead of moving straight into flow classes, which we'll get more into near the end of the season, we'll start with the yin and the joint mobility and things like this, getting into like, how can I invite my ribs to have a little bit more movement so that I free up not only my diaphragm, which gives me more breath, but that breath is also going to move the chi, but the freeness in my fascial body and between my ribs is going to give the liver like extra support to be able to move the energy through. So it's all deeply connected, and it's all just inviting us to go a little bit slower than comfortable, to really honor these moments of rest and also the moments of waking up. If you remember, this will be my last thing before I go. I can sometimes just talk forever. One thing leads to the next, leads to the next. But for those of you that have been on a journey, I like to call it, like when you first start yoga, or you start mindfulness, or you start meditation, or you start breath work, or you start eating in accordance to the seasons or in accordance to nature, there's a journey you go through. And often when we start, we see what's possible, but we're not there yet. Everything is really a process. Everything has a process. And it's this when we try to be here, when we're at the beginning of the process, we miss a lot of the small articulations of what is needed to get here. It's like when you step on the spiritual path, you're like, I just want to be enlightened. I just want to be enlightened. And so we walk around. Sometimes you'll start wearing the clothes immediately, or you'll immediately go vegetarian, or you'll do whatever. You'll just jump on the bandwagons because that's what you want. You see what you want. You have the vision and it's clear. And yet then we end up posturing and become, I think imposter syndrome is a word now that is quite common, but that's where imposter syndrome comes from. When we're staying in these superficial levels, but we're acting as if we're in the depth. But in order to get to the depth of anything, it takes time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of process and a lot of releasing things that might not be comfortable to let go of. And so to really invite ourselves, and this is where I would bring in the whole not having shame or guilt around not being there, but rather just, oh, this is where I am now. And I see where I'm going, but I can also honor that I'm not there yet. My girlfriend, she taught a breast massage class, and she was talking about free the nipples, and I was like, yeah, but free the lips too. Like free your vagina, free your vulva, free your yoni also. Like why? And I'm wearing spandex today, and I really had to think a lot about wearing them because I was like, oh, I don't really want something pushing up into my yoni. I want her to be free, because both of our nipples and our yonis, if you look at the anatomy, there's so much nerve innervation, and then we just lock them up all day long and they can't breathe. And like our yoni particularly wants to breathe, it needs to breathe, it wants to guide us. And anyway, she was like, well, how do you do that? Like, don't you get chafing? And I was like, well, and then I had to think about it, and I was like, oh yeah, even that was a process. It was a process of changing the clothes I'm wearing, which takes time if you don't have tons of money to just ditch your current closet and like collect natural materials and pants that are loose and flowy, and so that they're not stuck up to you. Because yeah, you can't free your yoni in a pair of jeans or pants that are super tight. That doesn't feel good. And so even that is a process of, oh, I want to be here where I don't have to wear, and even shirts like this, it's like I can go to my kid's school without my bra on in this shirt. Whereas a couple of years ago, some of my clothes were a little bit tighter and I would not feel comfortable with my nipples hanging out at my child's school. I personally don't find that appropriate, but maybe you do, and that's fine. But for me, that's not fine. So even just finding clothes where I'm like, okay, I can be out in public without a bra on and not feel like I'm attracting the attention that I don't want. So, okay, so that was a process. Changing pants, which changes style. It all was a process to get to where now it's like underwear and a bra aren't really a conversation, but it's a process. And so may we honor spring as part of the process, as yin is turning and churning back into yang. And we want to be there for, what does that feel like as this yin sleepy energy transitions back into active, flowing, more etheric energy? What is that feeling in my body? Because the more present we are for it, the more we can understand the embodiment of it, and then call upon that churning of something fixed and rigid into something more malleable, which works in our physical realms. Like, oh, I have a knot in my neck. Oh, I know the sensation of turning something fixed into something malleable. Okay, I know what vibration to go into to get that. Your mind is really fixed on something. This is absolutely true. But you sitting in front of someone who believes the opposite, okay, I know that sensation of turning this like I'm right into something more malleable. I can listen, you know? Spiritually, maybe we think we're on the path, and yet as we watch ourself and our symptoms and the way that we feel, oh, maybe I'm not so fixed. I can practice this, making this more malleable to see what parts of this work and what parts are actually not working for me. And then we can come malleable. So when we can really use nature and its seasons and its cycles and its way, its movement of energy, we can be present with what's happening and not try to push or pull it in any direction, but be with what is currently happening. We start to learn how to utilize those ways to support ourselves in all the different layers of our existence. And for me, that's very important, but maybe it's not for you yet, or maybe that seems like a bit too big right now. And that's okay. We can just tuck it away in a pocket and it will come back up later. So I think I digressed a couple times there, but I hope some of that was helpful for some of you. So this practice, the beginning, you don't need anything, but sometimes proprioception can support us in what we're doing. So you could always grab, this is kind of a weird one. I was playing with my small intestine experience yesterday. So it was as similar to a small intestine as I could come up with, but a flatter band would probably be better to wrap around your ribs. We'll just do a bit of rib breathing. Also a blanket you could have just to wrap around your ribs to give some sensation. Now, the other option is you can lay down and sit for this practice, or if you have really, really tight hips, you can choose to make your mat come against the wall, and you can do almost the whole practice, like a lot of the hip stuff will do, you can do up against the wall, and I will teach that. So know if you have really tight hips, change your mat right now to be up against the wall. And if not, keep your mat as it is, and the center is completely fine, especially if your hips are mobile. Okay, so come and lay on your back. Do make sure you have socks on or clothes that are going to keep you warm if your space is a little bit chilly. If you have the posture that I think many of us sadly do now, where our chins are a little bit forward and we've lost a bit the curve of our neck or our cervical spine, I always recommend when you come to laying down, take a blanket. There's even like chiropractic blocks you can get that do this as well. But I like to roll it up and put it underneath my neck so that I can, while I'm spending all this time on my back, rebuild my cervical curve. Okay, so that's one option with the blanket. The other option is just to have it wrapping around your ribs. So once on your back, do set yourself up really well. We will also be moving into a yoga nidra to finish. So make sure you have your blocks and props and anything you'd like for the yoga nidra portion. If your low back is feeling tight or stiff, feel free to have your knees bent. If your back is fine, you can have your legs straight. Take your hands and just place them on top of your ribs and let your elbows slide out as much as possible so that you can even be on as much the sides of your ribs as possible, where the gallbladder and liver meridians are running. And just for a moment, do your body scan and check in with, how am I right now? You might even ask yourself, where am I right now? Is my whole self here? Is my mind somewhere? Are my emotions somewhere? Is my dedication somewhere else? And sometimes even our nervous system, if we're wired to be in stress, even when you're laying here doing nothing, you might notice your nervous system, I call it, is somewhere else. It might be somewhere else in the sense of not allowing you to be safe because it's wired to not be safe. And in this moment, could you pause and just state to yourself, hi, my name is Sarah, or whatever yours is. I'm in my office and I'm laying down. And sometimes just doing that can allow your nervous system to even come here and realize, oh, wow, I'm actually safe right now. Okay, I can start to tell my nervous system that it can move into a place of safety because in this present moment I am safe. And maybe your nervous system isn't ready for that yet, but maybe it is, even for just a moment. Checking in is a supportive practice to change. Allowing yourself to notice how the light is in the backs of your eyelids, if your eyes are closed, just noticing how the light comes in. You can notice the smell of your space. You can notice the way that the air in your space, how it touches your skin, the temperature, the humidity of it. And begin to breathe into your hands that are on your ribs. If your hands aren't warm, if they're cold, rub them together until they are warm, as our attention is often attracted and allured by warmth. And even the ground coming up into the back of your rib cage, breathe into the back of the rib cage and ground. Invite yourself to breathe into the sides of your rib cage. When we invite this breath into our rib cage, not only do we relax our nervous system, as there's a bundle of nerves right underneath the bottom of your diaphragm, but we also invite the fascia to change, and we invite some flexibility through our breath into our diaphragm and the muscles that lie in between each of the ribs. So this rib breathing is actually also creating flexibility. You can explore, if I breathe into the back of my ribs first, is that the most potent? If I breathe back, sides, front, is that most potent? If I breathe into the sides of my ribs, is that the most potent? Because each of us will have a different pattern weaved through our ribs based on how we breathe, how we posture, our way of holding ourselves and all of our things. So just explore as I breathe what allows it to feel the most warm and the most calming. I often find starting in the back of my body, since that's sort of out of my outer vision, it usually, for me, yields the most potency. But I've also been noticing as we enter into spring and the liver and the gallbladder channels wake up, if I breathe into the sides of my ribs, I can feel a lot more flow in my body. So just have a moment to invite yourself to explore that. And if you notice your mind is sort of all over the place and you can't drop into the breath, just stay with your mind for a second and then asking, like, where are you going? Why are you running around? What do you need? And just see if it's possible to bring its attention to the ribs, to be enthralled by the simplicity of breathing that yields such immense sensation, if we can be present for it. And we'll be breathing in our ribs like this for the rest of the class, so you'll have lots of time to continue working with that. So continue breathing with your ribs as we take the first shape, which is called Bananasana. Funny enough. So walk your right foot a little bit wider, and you can bring your left foot just to be right beside your right foot. You can cross your left ankle over top, or your left ankle over top of your right ankle. And if you're not sure which one, do both and see which yields the greatest depth for you. Then take a moment once your legs are there, breathe into your ribs, and just allow the sensations to find their place, the bones to find their place. Then when the sensations start to subside a little bit, walk your spine over to the right, or the top of your spine, I should say, over to the right in a lateral flexion. And then you can choose to keep your hands on your ribs if you find that supportive, or you can bring your arms overhead. Then take a few moments to wiggle if you need to, or adjust yourself so that your bones feel like they can really relax into the ground. You may focus breathing a little bit more fully into your left rib cage, your left lung. And if you're used to belly breathing, which is often taught in the yoga sphere, totally fine. And see if you can try a different technique or a different way and breathe more into your ribs. And then after your ribs, if your belly wants to fill, great. But make sure the ribs do come first, as it's supportive for a number of different reasons. And do notice as your body and your tissues start to rest a little bit more into the shape. Do notice if any of your joints feel a bit stuck the way that they're held, or perhaps you're just unconsciously, your nervous system is holding a joint a little bit stiff. Once the main bones and tissues soften, then go into your joints, whether it's your wrists or your ankles or your fingers and toes, and see if you can allow them to also turn into a more malleable, soft state so that the energy can easily move through the joints. In Chinese medicine, our joints are very closely linked to the liver and the gallbladder. And so part of nourishing the movement of the liver and the gallbladder, which offers us so much through emotional stability and also feeling that all is possible. Just simple things like inviting your joints to not hold themselves, but rather just receive the movement of energy or be a passageway for the movement of energy. We can support so much in our system through being a passage. And just as much as your elbow, wrists, and ankles and knees are joints that we're very aware of, so too is the joint between the spinal column, the atlas, and the occiput, or the base of your skull. So notice even here if there's tension or a blockage at the base of the skull, and how do we allow that to be a passage of energy instead? Or if you clench your jaw on one side or both, how do you allow that temporal mandibular joint to be a passageway for energy instead of a blockage of energy flow or a holder of energy? And then ever so slightly allow your left leg to slowly heel toe its way over and away from your right leg. Then you may press into your heels and adjust your pelvis so your low back feels spacious. And then take a moment to be in the sensation of your legs no longer being crossed. And once those sensations start to dissipate, you can't really heel toe your spine, but crawl your spine back to center. And take a moment in center, noticing the sensations of change. And when the sensations start to dissipate, we'll switch sides. So walking your left foot a little bit wider, and you can slide your right leg or heel toe it if you're really sensitive in your body. And the legs can either be together, or again, you can cross the right ankle on top of the left. And notice the sensations that arise from that movement. Let your body settle into that new shape. And when the sensations dissipate, walk your spine into a lateral flexion over to the left. And then take a moment to just allow your bones to soften. Notice the sensations that come through bringing your body into a lateral flexion. Make any little mini adjustments you need. And once the mini adjustments are allowed, allow all of your, or have been made, allow all of your tissues to soften away from the bones so that your bones can relax earthward. And sending your breath a little bit more thoroughly into your right rib cage, your right lung. And as you breathe into your right lung, notice if there's any sensations that arise in different place than your right lungs. Maybe you notice your face starts to hold, or somewhere further away from the ribs starts to hold. And this is the beautiful thing about having a focal vision, being in the ribs and breathing into the ribs while still maintaining a peripheral vision of your entire body, seeing yourself as a whole, and how as one thing changes, it inadvertently causes everything to change. And if we are attached to certain things, you'll find as one thing becomes free, somewhere else will try to hold. And so we simply, with so much grace and love and admiration of ourself, we can navigate, I notice I'm holding my face where I normally don't hold my face right now. As I breathe into my ribs, I'm going to see, is it possible that I can relax my face? Or maybe my jaw started to clench, or my hip or my knee, or anywhere. And just noticing that as something becomes free, we don't start to hold somewhere else. Or we're at least aware of that holding. The body and the mind and the nervous system protect us in so many beautiful ways, but they'll also do it automatically when perhaps it's not necessary in this exact moment. And so when we can be present to the nuance of, maybe I need to hold myself like that when I'm off of my mat and out of my practice, but perhaps while I'm in my practice in a safe room by myself, maybe I don't need to hold just for this moment. And maybe you do, but at least we can start to ask the question and get curious about the answer. And be nuanced enough to know that it's not always true. And then same thing with your joints. Notice if, once your body starts to settle, if any of your joints are holding rigid or tight, and could they be open passageways for energy to flow instead of places where energy gather and get stuck. And start to slowly heel toe your right leg away from your left. Allow yourself to feel the sensations that move through your body as you change form. And when the sensations dissipate, you can sort of head spine your way back to center with your torso. And if your arms are above your head, maybe relax them back down. And when you're in a symmetrical position, just take a few breaths to notice being here, and breathe into your sides of your ribs as evenly as you can on the right and left. For those of you like myself who are trained in the belly breathing, really try to take deep breaths into the sides of the ribs before the belly. Okay. And one leg at a time, bend into your knees and walk your feet up, staying with your rib breathing. Then bring your knees into your chest, and first, don't squeeze them. Just start to gently rock them from right to left while rib breathing. And once you feel like your low spine and your SI joints soften a little bit, then reach for your shins or behind your knees and add a little bit of pressure through the groins. And think about your knees sort of gliding from the right to the left so that you can feel your groins getting a little bit of a squish. Okay. Now, we'll have two options here. For those of you that are wanting to do the rest of the practice with your legs up the wall, just for the sake of staying on your back because it feels nourishing, or if you have really tight hips, you can just sort of spin your butt up against the wall and go legs up the wall here. For those of you that are going to move into a seated, roll off to one side while still breathing deep into your ribs, and very, very slowly make your way into your seated position. And I offer options because if you do seated postures and your hips are really tight, we can cause more tightness and less opening. So for those of you that have tight hips, do please go legs at the wall, and it'll make such a difference. Okay. Extend your legs out in front of you or up the wall. And just with both legs straightened, allow yourself to, for a moment, rock back and forth, just allowing your bones and the tendons and ligaments of your hips to just feel what it feels like to sit upright, but also to settle and find themselves in the ground. The next thing I would like you to bring your attention to, if you're sitting, are your sit bones, and just making sure that you're sitting in the center of them or slightly front of them, that you're not sitting at the back of them. If you are sitting at the back of your sit bones, take your blanket or a block or roll up the back of your mat and place it underneath your bum so that you can be sitting in the center or the front of your sit bones. This is very important. Otherwise, we exacerbate this tightness through the groins and the lack of movement in our diaphragms, which shortens our breath and shortens our life. Okay. So once you feel solid, the other option, of course, is bending your knees a little bit by folding a blanket underneath your upper thighs or using a bolster. Bend your right knee and bring your right foot anywhere from your ankle up into your groin. Now, if you're used to doing a yoga practice and high is best, maybe explore less, because what we're looking for, again, is this movement of energy through our joints. If you're pulling yourself in too deep, the joint is also in a very deep bend, so is the ankle, so is the groin. There's not as much energy that can move through the joint, especially not if it doesn't feel good to be here. So give yourself the grace of, you don't have to be as deep in the posture as you can go. It can be about something else. So that's for you to choose and explore on your own. And then sit long through your spine, not in a way that's posturally rigid, but in a way that feels like your spine wants to move upward, attracted to the cosmos perhaps, or to being an antenna for information. And from your bottom of your spine all the way up, take a very slight rotation so that the bone in front of your heart, your sternum, is over your extended leg. And then from your sternum, start to very slowly fold forward. You can rock back and forth as your body finds its way. And just take as much time to get there as you want. If you are on the wall, you're taking the same shape. Your knee is bent. Your foot's probably going to come a lot further down due to passivity, but don't worry about keeping your ankle flexed and all of this alignment. Let your legs roll out. Let your leg relax and be as passive as possible, focusing on breathing into your ribs. Now, if you suffer anxiety or anything like that, if you can lay on your back with legs up the wall, it's going to be very supportive to just the sensation of trust, which can allow the anxiety to relax. Anxiety, and there's different forms of anxiety. There's, in Chinese medicine anyways, there's anxiety that comes from a fullness of like too much energy. And sometimes then you need to run or do a little bit more movement in your body to work with that level of anxiety. And sometimes anxiety actually comes from more of an emptiness, which then taking rest can be supportive for that anxiety. And so if you have the empty form, laying on your back will be very supportive to allowing the anxiety to rest. And if you want to think of anxiety instead of a word, which makes it a cerebral thing, anxiety is energy that has nowhere to land. And so it just sort of flies around the body, creating that sense of dis-ease in the chest and in the mind and in the guts, really, too. And so if you think about like, oh, how can I invite this energy to land? What would allow this energy to land? Maybe it's movement and then it can land. Maybe it's actually just finding safety and rest. So I just want to offer that as an additional piece. And as always in my classes, if a little bit of movement is going to bring you into a deeper state, allow yourself to find those bits of movements. If teaching yourself to be still will bring you in deeper, then invite yourself to find some form of discipleship to yourself and invite yourself to stillness. All the while breathing into the backs of your ribs, the sides of your ribs. And if your ankle joints are feeling stiff, you can roll them or shake them or whatever you need to invite them to be a passageway of energy. And if as you spend time here, the sides of your body become a little bit soft, you can always walk your hands to the outside of your right leg or your left leg as well, opening a little bit more through the side of your torso. And noticing as well the base of your skull where there's the top of the vertebra, the top of the spinal column that enters into the skull, that is a joint. And so checking, is the way that I'm holding my head, the way that I'm holding my neck in this posture, is it allowing this occipital atlas joint to be a passageway of energy from my spine into my mind? Or am I holding it in a way that's blocking that flow of energy and causing a buildup? And if there is a blockage way, then explore, how can I hold my neck, release my neck in a way that allows the energy to flow really clearly? Maybe it involves a little bit of movement, a little bit of curiosity to find, how can I let that release? How can I hold it? Maybe your hand needs to hold your head so that the tightness of the tendons don't take the show. Or maybe a block or a bolster needs to hold your head. Just inviting yourself to figure out all the different ways that you need to be taken care of. Knowing that it's not high maintenance to want to take care of yourself, and that it might take a lot of different things to get there at first. Or that there's moments in time where you need a little bit more, and other moments you can be more simple. And if your legs are up the wall, just stay for a moment longer. If you are folded forward, not moving quickly because we don't want to alarm our body, we're still breathing really deeply into the back and the sides of the ribs. Then very slowly, with the support of your hands, just start to rock right to left as you rock and walk your hands back up to seated. But take the time so that nothing feels like woo, but it feels like ah, or whatever sound your body makes. Then once you're in seated, you might go totally still, or you might feel this urge to rock a little bit. Once the sensations of changing from a folded position to an upright spine, when the sensations have subsided, then slowly straighten your right leg. And if you're on the wall, slowly extend your leg up the wall. And same thing, once both legs are straight, you might be still in your spine, or you might rock gently right to left until everything feels as if it's settled. And breathing equally into the right and left sides of your lungs. And once the sensations subside, start by bending into your left knee and bringing the bottom of your left foot anywhere along the inside line of your right leg. If you're on the wall, just slide your foot down and get settled in. Then when you're ready, float the spine up. So between our vertebrae, we have our vertebral discs, which are hopefully fluffy, hydrated discs. And so I like to think of when I lift my spine upright, I like to think of these discs as like when you fluff up a pillow. And so the motion of me lifting my body is like me fluffing up the pillows of these intervertebral discs. And so I'm just offering the bones some space. I'm not pulling myself tight. I'm not forcing myself into a tall, perfect spine. I'm just fluffing the pillows of my intervertebral discs so that my spine is a little bit more upright and the movement of energy and cerebral spinal fluid becomes more free to move. Okay. When you feel like you've fluffed your discs, gently offer this rotation towards the right so that your sternum, the bone in front of your heart, is in the line of your extended leg. And then you can begin your descent into a forward fold, or just stay sitting upright if that's all your legs are able to handle. There's just so much honor in listening to ourselves. And notice if you're feeling quite stiff, which I very much am this morning, let this movement, this like lullaby of rocking yourself from right to left, support your ligaments, your tendons, and all the muscles that are wrapped in this beautiful fascial body, and even your fascia that's been holding in a particular way. Give it a bit of a lullaby or a smooth movement into the posture. You'll notice when we don't just try to fold forward and change the shape, but we offer some malleability into the shape. It's like spring, taking the whole season to fold forward. All of a sudden, the posture can open to you without there being a different part of the body that needs to posture or hold tight because you're trying to open too quick. And once you settle into your shape, and your bones and everything are settled, check in with your joints. How does my ankle feel? Do I need to roll it a little bit or maybe offer it massage with my hands or just warmth with my hands if it's feeling stiff? How are my knee joints? Do they feel taken care of, both the straight and the bent one? Or do I need a bit of massage or warmth to allow them to feel really loved? And do this for all of your joints, all the way up to this occipital joint. Is the way I'm holding my head supportive to the flow of energy. And we're breathing into the backs of your ribs, into the sides of your ribs. You can even check in with the intervertebral disc, these little fluffy pillows in between each of your vertebrae. Are you holding the bones of your spine in a way that helps to elongate and keep these pillows the whole way from bottom to the top fluffy? Or are we falling in different parts of our spine? And as you breathe into the backs of your ribs, into the sides of your ribs, what is the gift that the rest of your body receives from doing that? If your legs are up the wall, stay there. If you're folded forward, allow yourself to begin this gentle rocking from right to left through the spine. And use your hands to help you very slowly at a pace that doesn't feel startling, but rather it feels a bit connected to come out. And walk back and forth until you're upright, where you can continue the sway or settle into stillness. It doesn't matter what you did on the other side, just listen to what is needed now. Keeping all of the joints available for energetic movement through them. And then if your legs are up the wall, or if you're seated, very slowly extend your left leg out straight. And then allow yourself to make circles with your ankles. You can bend your knees or make circles with the knees. Just allowing yourself to release. If you're sitting and you feel your low back needs some love, you can always bend your knees and fold forward and roll up. Just creating lots of movement. Right. So our next posture will be fire log pose. And there's going to be lots of prop options for those of you sitting. For those of you on the wall, I will show you first how to come into it. So if you're on the wall, bend into your right knee and it can come up. Your foot can come to just above your left knee. And you can stay here. You can bend your left knee a little bit and stay here, or a lot. You just don't want your bum curling up away from the ground. So you want your sacrum and your hips to stay on the ground. The other option is to bend your left knee as well. And you can use your right hand on your right thigh to support you here. Now, if you're on the ground, all the same thing. The right knee bends and the outer right ankle comes above your left knee. And if you can stay in the center of your sit bones or slightly forward, this is a good position. If you have a little bit more open hips and you can bend the left leg as well, you can come with both the knees and the ankles stacked. Now, if you come here and you roll to the back of your sit bones, you can take a block to the front of your left knee and place your right foot on top of that block. If you're still at the back of your sit bones, you can slide the block a little bit more to center and stay here. If this is good, stay. If you're still at the back of your sit bones, I highly recommend keeping your bottom leg straight instead and being here. Okay. Good. So settle into your position with your legs and take a moment to come back into the rib breathing if you lost it in the shuffling of the posture. And then fluff the pillows of your spine. So the whole spinal column is really feels quite light. Then from your bottom of your spine all the way to the top, twist to your left or in the direction of the foot that's on top. And without pulling with your arms are just there as a support. You can place your right hand either on your right ankle or on the bottom of your right heel. Maybe even your right thigh feels more, or your left thigh feels more natural. Just moving into a bit of a twist. If you're on the ground, you can get creative, or you can just rest with doing just the legs. And then breathe into the backs and the sides of your ribs while you're here. And if you're unable to breathe full through the ribs, readjust the way that your arms are holding your body so that the ribs can get a full expansion. All of the joints of your body are passageways for energy to flow. And when you feel ready, you'll unwind very slowly, just almost release the hands and let the tendons and ligaments untwist you. And then you have the option to stay sitting tall or folding forward. Now, again, if you're in the twist and it feels really liberating, stay. If you're in the twist and it feels like, okay, the sensations are complete, then you can move into the next space. But learning to trust your natural rhythms and ways is quite important. Remember, folding forward, allow it to be a slow movement. You might find it's a little bit easier since we've already taken one folded forward posture. And so the fascia has already gotten to break up and the lower back is prepared. And notice if you're holding your head in a way that is supportive to all of the joints of your neck and your occiput. The breath is deep in the ribs, filling and expanding. Even your ankle joints are soft passageways for energy to flow. Your whole spinal column, all of the joints are passageways for energy and cerebral spinal fluid to flow. And if you folded forward, allow your hands to one at a time move in your direction to help sway the spine up to vertical. And take a moment once the spine is in vertical, just to recalibrate and feel the sensations of change. And then extend slowly your legs, whether they're up the wall or you're sitting. And invite the sensations your legs are desiring in to release any holdings through the hips or any joints. Good. And then switching sides, you know all of the options, so I won't walk through them again. Making your way in. Once your legs are settled, especially so that the ankle joints don't feel stiff, you want to place them in a way where your foot's not falling to the inside and it puts quite a lot of tension on the outside of your ankle and contraction on the inside of the ankle. Make sure that the foot and the ankle bone is almost on the outside of the thigh so that the foot can really be in rest, but the ankle is still fully open. And again, you might need to put it on a block in front if it can't quite get there on its own. And then fluffing up the spine. Get lots of space in a really soft way. And once you find that, on an exhale, rotate from the bottom of your spine all the way up. And just allowing yourself to place your arms in a way that supports this opening without creating any blockages. Making sure you're on the middle or slightly front of your sit bones, and that your ribs aren't pulling forward, but your whole spine is staying in its natural curves. Breathing into your ribs, back, sides, front. And same as the other side, when you feel like your twist is complete and you're ready to return to center or move into a forward fold, please listen to your body's cues and move in that direction. And stay as long or as short of a time as it seems to serve you. And as always, it doesn't have to be the same amount of time on both sides. Our bodies are not symmetrical. Our organs are not symmetrical. Unless you do everything in your life with both your left and your right hands, your body is not going to be symmetrical. And so to treat it like it is a bit silly. One side might need to be held longer than the other because it's more wound up or used more often. And so we just start to learn to discern the cues of our body. Is it wanting me to stop because it doesn't want to be there anymore? Or is it wanting me to stop because it's actually complete now? Is your head placed in a way that allows fluidity of both energy and cerebral spinal fluid to flow freely? Is your jaw sitting in a way that allows the energy to flow through the jaw instead of get stuck and build up in tension? And if you're folded forward, allow yourself to unravel with so much delicacy, making your way out of your posture in a way that won't create any alarm. Once you're upright, allow yourself to experience the sensations of being upright. Good. And then releasing your legs slowly, whether you're on the wall or seated. And you can point and flex your ankles. You can shake your knees, wiggle your hips, whatever will allow the energy to flow through. So again, I'll guide the people on the wall first. Our next posture is Gomukhasana. So you can bend into your right knee, slide your left foot a little bit more to center, and have your knees stacked on top of one another. You may also bend both knees and have the knees stacked with the feet closer. And you can explore feet further away from your hips versus close to your hips and see which offers you the greatest depth. When we move into side body stretches, you can just walk your spine over to one side, back to center, and over to the other side. Okay. If you're seated, all the same. So bend into your right knee. Without the use of your hands, bring it to cross and stack on top of your left knee. Now, this may be enough, especially if you're rolling back already in your hips, sit on top of something. You can also bend your bottom knee a little bit. And if your hips let you, bend the bottom one. Same thing, if you end up leaning off to the side, you're probably going too deep and it would support you to keep the bottom leg straight. Or if you fall backwards into your hips, it's probably too deep. Keep the bottom leg straight. Okay. So from here, even just give your hips a little bit of a wiggle so you can feel both your sit bones on the ground and that you're in the center of them or just slightly forward or anterior. Good. Then keep rooted through your right sit bone as you walk your fingertips over to the left. And you can keep your right hand on your hip just to keep it anchored. Check if you went into flexion in your spine and lift up through your sternum and even begin to turn the bone in front of your heart, your sternum slightly towards the ceiling. Your left rib cage will draw forward as your left slides back. Notice if you're creating a kink in your neck by holding it and the energy can't flow, creating tension. And just allow your neck to be as free as you can, which might mean looking to the ground for you or hanging it off to the side, just exploring that. And do you like your arm overhead where it's relaxed instead of efforting? Or does it feel better to keep it down beside you? If your legs are up the wall, you can, as I said earlier, move into a lateral flexion by walking your spine off to one side. Stay here as long as it serves you. When you feel ready, you'll slowly walk your left fingertips towards you and pour over to the right side, keeping the sit bone rooted. But do stay as long as you need to feel like, wow, that's complete. Notice if the completion is a habit or a want to leave, or if it's the truth. Sometimes as something starts to awaken, we're like, oh, I got to get away from that. And so just notice if it's really an honoring of yourself or if it's an escaping of yourself. And when you finish on that side, you'll come through center with the option to sit up tall or fold forward. Breathing into your ribs. And if you're folded forward, very slowly start to walk your hands back up. Once you're in vertical, experience the sensations that come with change of position. When those dissipate, one leg at a time without the use of your hands, unwind your legs and extend them out in front of you or up the wall. And offer yourself anything you need to kind of release any sensations or to move the sensations through. And when the sensations feel moved, we'll switch sides. Without your hands, bring your left knee to stack on top of your right. And some of you may stay here. If you're able to go a little bit deeper, you can bend your right knee as well. Now you'll move through the side stretches and the forward fold again at your own pace so that your body is getting the release that it needs. So when you are ready, whether your legs up or up the wall or you're seated, just walk yourself over to the right, keeping your outer left hip and sit bone grounded to the wall or the floor. And again, your left hand can stay on your hip as an anchor. It can relax over your head. And having your right rib cage draw forward as your left draws slightly back, turning your sternum towards the ceiling. Making sure your head's being held in a way that creates a smooth flow of energy. There's no tension. Really listening into your body for when it gives the cues of this feels complete, I'm ready to move to the other side. Notice if your brain wants to decide for you based on what you did on the other side. And instead, see if you can invite yourself to be so present that it really is your body deciding when you come out. that it says, I'm complete. Do remember when you get the I'm complete cues that you come out super slow so as to not startle your nervous system. You can take a moment in center if you need, or very slowly go right on over to the other side. But again, taking the time that your body's asking for these cycles of completion. The same way we'll meander through spring nice and slow, not racing to summer. Instead, we're here for what is here. And as you get deep into your side body, if you start to get like these sensations of wanting to vomit or intensity or freedom or irritability or anger or anything, all of that is actually quite normal. And just allow yourself to be with it. Maybe you stick out your tongue if you get the vomiting sensation and you just let it move that way. Or if energy flow isn't your usual, it stays a little bit more dormant in your body and it starts to move and you start to feel a bit like, whoa, nauseous or what other sensation could it cause? Just almost like you don't know what to do with the amount of flow. Just remember to stay really slow and grounded in your body and just allow it to do its movement without needing to stop it or slow it, but just see what happens. Be the container for it the best you know how to. Breathing into the backs of your ribs and the sides of your ribs. And then very slowly, if you're folded forward, meander your hands back up towards your hips until your spine is vertical. And once you're vertical, allow that shift of change to be felt. And then whether legs are up the wall or you're seated, slowly extend your legs out straight without the use of your hands. And wiggle them right to left or shake them out. And our final yin posture is extending your legs out straight. So you may want to turn sideways on whatever you're sitting on or have something underneath your heels if that tends to bother you. If your legs as wide as they can go bothers the insides of your knees, bring your legs closer together. Now, if you go into falling into the backs of your sit bones, you can either put blocks underneath your knees, and that will offer a bit of ease and movement through the pelvis, or you can sit on top of your blanket. If you're on the wall is there to support you. If you want to move onto a wall for this one because it's super hard for you to sit upright in your pelvis, feel free to go up against the wall. Good. And then just take a moment here, really stabilize your pelvic halves, so the bones, keep them stable, and think about your lower spine flowing from right to left, like a piece of grass would do in the wind, or maybe a piece of wheat. Just creating some mobility through the lumbar joints or the low back spinal joints. And you may even add a little bit of twisting through as you breathe into the backs of your ribs and the sides of your ribs. And once your inner groins feel like they've maybe released a little bit, you may begin to start folding forward. Again, the liver channel moves up the inner lines of the legs and wraps the genitals and then comes up the sides of the body. So inviting this movement and this opening of the liver channel. We went from a lot of bent knee postures, and this is now our straight leg posture, which will help to really cleanse and flush the knees and the ankles and the hips. So let your ankles, even in this posture, be soft, especially if you're used to keeping them flexed. Let it be soft so that they're a passageway for the energy to flow through them. Same with your knees. If they're feeling like a little bit stuck, roll up a blanket or place even like socks underneath your knees so that they can feel really open to flow as well. Then eventually, if you feel ready to take this into a forward fold, you could always grab a bolster to lay on or a block, or just use your arms out in front of you. If you are quite malleable in this posture, you can always thread the needle, which was super supportive to the liver and gallbladder, sending your left arm in the direction of your right foot, outer shoulder, and cheek comes to your right fist. And then you'd switch sides once you feel complete. Then check in with your spinal column. Do all of the pillows feel fluffed and the energy able to flow through the joints? If not, how can you hold your spine to create so much freedom in the joints? Same with your jaw. Can there be freedom in that joint? Breathing into the backs and the sides of your ribs. With 5 more full rib breaths here. If any part is holding that could potentially soften in this moment, invite it to do so if you feel safe to. And then very slowly, if you folded forward, walk yourself back up, shimmying from right to left. And then walk your hands all the way back behind you. If you're on the wall, you'll very slowly heel toe your feet back together. Walk your hands behind you and let your legs slide together, and then bend your knees and rock them right to left. If you're on the wall, you can bend your feet or bend your knees so your feet are on the wall, and then rock them right to left. And as you rock, you can look over the opposite shoulder. And by opposite shoulder, I mean if the knees are going to the left, look over the right shoulder. And rock until you feel ready to make your way onto your back again. If you have your legs up the wall, you can go straight legs up your wall. If you feel like your legs need a break from being up, which they very much might, come into a regular Shavasana position away from the wall. Good. Once you're laying flat on the ground, bring your knees into your chest and give them a squeeze. If you wanted to go legs up the wall, just bring your feet onto the wall and squeeze your knees into your chest. And you can rock or be still. And then if you've been sitting, you can extend your legs up. If you've had your legs up the wall and you don't want them up the wall anymore and you've moved into Shavasana, then just set yourself up for Shavasana. But if you've been sitting, you can extend your legs to the sky and shake them out. If they're up the wall, you can still shake them there. And then settle yourself into your Shavasana position. You want to cover up with a blanket so you don't get cold, you can cover up. And if you want to go legs up the wall, if you haven't, you can go legs up the wall. Take one more full breath into your ribs. And let it go as slowly as you can. And then release any control of your breath or body altogether. Now, another option, actually, just kidding, no more options. So set yourself up for either legs up the wall or a classic Shavasana position, the best you can. You may want to go bolster under your knees. If your low back is feeling it all stiff. You may want to go blanket rolled up underneath your neck, your cervical spine. We won't be here too long, just long enough that the body can integrate and process the practice and have a moment in stillness where all of the mobilization comes to rest. Just giving your body one more scan, checking if there's any joints at all that feel as if they're held or positioned in a way that doesn't allow them to be a passage for energy flow. And just allowing yourself to wiggle or adjust or shake out however you need to, so that all of your joints can feel as if they're passageways of energy. Then notice for a moment if there's any control of your breath and see if you can really allow that to soften as well. Notice if there's any control or contraction through the mind and see if you can even just allow your mind to soften and be a reception for this energy flow. And may we use this moment to practice our trust that if we rest, all that needs to be integrated will get a chance to integrate. All that needs to be released will get a chance to release. And that if we hold ourselves in this spaciousness, that perhaps our mind doesn't need to be the one to discern anything. And in our rest, all is discerned for us based on natural rhythms and truth. You are a container for energy to flow through. Allow yourself to just simply be the vessel. No more doing, simply absorbing and releasing, resting. And if you work with a sankalpa or an I am statement, you can call it in now. Sankalpa is not necessarily an intention as much as it is calling forth something about yourself that's already true. For example, my Sankalpa that I've been working with for a couple of years now is I am here, or I am present. I'm just calling forth this deep level of presence that is possible in every moment. So if you want to choose one now, or if you've been working with it, when the body is really open and the energy is flowing, when we call in this I am statement or this I am kind of willingness to step into, it moves through our body as information through this energy flow and into our cells so much quicker. So in this moment, state it to yourself a few times quietly, as if you wanted it to be infused into the flow of the energy in your body. And hold it as true. Okay. And starting to bring your awareness to all of your existence in this moment, your body, that which allows you to exist right now. And start to feel it. Feel the way the room touches your skin, the way the light meets your eyes, the way the sounds enter, the way the smells wake you up. And taking a deep breath in, reach and extend through your whole body. And exhale to let it go. And walk your feet either down the wall or towards your sit bones. And ever so gently roll onto whichever side you're called to. And let your head and neck be the last thing to arrive as you make your way up to seated. And you can place your hands on your heart or heart and womb, or palms together in prayer. Maybe on your face, wherever you're called to hold yourself. And just taking a moment to acknowledge the preciousness of your existence. To feel your existence in your very own hands. And thank you for being here. Sat Nam.